When I started dating this man, the inner voice was like, this is not right. This is not where you're supposed to be, what you're meant to do. And I'm like, shut up. I want to date him. He's interested in me. He thinks I'm pretty, whatever. I was rushing, trying to get to a job that I didn't even want to go to, and mad at myself for treating my kids like crap, who really were what in my heart I wanted to be at home with them. And yet that was not what any of my actions were showing. You don't have to be nice to anyone, but you always have to be kind to everyone. You don't have to be nice if they're infringing on your boundaries or, it's something you're not aligned with, but you still have to be kind. And there is a difference between the two.
Welcome to The Human Experience. I'm Jennifer Peterkin, and this is episode 30, Stephanie's Story. On a busy morning in 2017, Stephanie was participating in the chaos that was life as a working mom of 3 girls. But in her haste, she would accidentally close her finger and a car door slammed in frustration. That moment may not have been the source of the struggles that she had been walking through, but it was the catalyst that forced her to seek change. Now, years later, Stephanie is living a completely different life, one that she is both proud of and finding joy in. Currently, she has created a business called Neo Strategic, helping both businesses and individuals find and plan their path forward. You can find links to Stephanie's website and social media in the show notes. Let's go back to 12 years old, because I want to hear it all.
Yeah, so back at 12 years old, I was this little girl who had really big dreams and a very vivid image that my life would include living in Texas and Montana at some point. I had no idea how both of those were going to happen. At the time, it was one or the other, and even Wyoming was thrown in there as a possibility.
So you were 12, and we're sitting in Texas now, so
yes.
You did get there.
I did.
Well, at least say that. Yeah,
that's right. Yep. And I constantly remind myself of that. Like, you've accomplished a lot of. I actually wrote out at the beginning of this year. I did a little timeline, and I wrote out a list of all the different dreams I'd had in my life. I separated into sections. This is my analytical brain at work. Age 1 to 10, like all the dreams that I could remember having, and then put next to them dates of when they had come true, if they had or if they hadn't. And 2/3 of my dreams that I've had over my life or goals have come true. And
wow,
that was really pivotal at the beginning of this year because I had just started a business and it was like crickets with customers. So I was trying to remind myself, you are making things happen. Like, things do happen in their own time.
That's extremely important because we are very hard on ourselves, and it can be very easy to kind of get into this mentality of, I'm such a loser. I've never done anything good in my life.
Yes.
Like, our memory when it comes to ourselves is so terrible.
Yeah. So on this trajectory, I was going to be a barrel racer and I was going to own a ranch at one day.
Okay.
That was the goal. Obviously, you only do that in one of those 3 states. In my little kid mind, that was, So my parents said they would take me to writing lessons if I found a way to earn the money to pay for the lessons. And of course, I made a budget and I figured out different odd jobs I could do to make that amount of money every 2 weeks. And so every 2 weeks, I went and took writing lessons. And that spanned pretty much my entire middle school career, so 6th through 8th grade. The summer of my 7th grade, I had the opportunity to help a family member whose partner had just passed away on their farm. They had show horses, and so it was an opportunity to be around horses, and it ended up being quite a bit of responsibility, but I loved every second of it because I did get to take care of horses. And, my current boyfriend actually laughs at me because he grew up on a real ranch. And when I talk about really liking the smell of horse manure in the stalls and the barn, and he's like, it's you didn't live with it long enough. And I'm like, I lived with it long enough. I just really like it. I always have. So I had that summer experience. During that experience, I ended up developing a relationship with this family member who I was helping take care of her horses. And it developed into a very close, at the time I would have said, friendship. But now looking back, I realized that I was exposed to things at that age that I should not have been exposed to. I was talked to about topics that I would never talk to my 12-year-old about right now. And I was also introduced to this idea that there were categories of people. You were either like drop dead gorgeous, or you were pretty, or you were just kind of homely. And I was put in that category over and over again. And I kind of internalized that, and it became this thing. I just ended up developing this idea that I had to strive to be someone in order to earn other people's approval and acceptance. Mm-hmm. And so the more I did that, the less I pursued my own dream. I ended up giving up horseback riding lessons when I started high school because the people who were being popular and seen were doing things like, joining all the sports teams and having a boyfriend, and it just spiraled.
Yeah.
It spiraled and spiraled. And it was always easy for me to get good grades. Like I didn't have to strive very much. And I love learning. To this day, if I could just get paid to learn all day long, I would totally do it, depending on what I'm learning.
Yeah,
But, most of the things that I was learning in high school, I was really interested in. And so I just kind of dove into that and then got that reinforcement of, good grades, acceptance, approval, awards. And so the cycle continued of, okay, I have to get these good grades and awards so that I'm accepted, but I also have to look good. I have to be a good girlfriend. I have to, all the things, right? And so my life just became this constant striving, and foreign languages and different ways, different cultures had always interested me as well. So from a young age, I had this love of anything different than me. I used to embarrass my mom all the time in the grocery store. Like she said, I would go up to anyone that looked different than me and ask them, why their skin was a different color, or, why they were wearing clothes that were different than me. Just genuine curiosity and love of people. Mm-hmm. I just loved people. There was no differences to me until I got older, and that was put into me. So I had that. I always wanted to be on the go. That was another thing that constantly, like, to sit at home just wasn't acceptable. Whether it was riding horses or mowing grass with a lawnmower, or riding a go-kart or a bike, it was just if I could be in forward motion, I was happy.
Yeah.
So that persisted. I was on this youth group mission trip. I had been taking Spanish for 3 years in high school. I was trying to work with these guys on a mission trip, and I could not understand them, and they spoke Spanish. And it just like this surge of determination, like one day I will be able to speak this language fluently.
Yeah.
And so that took me down a slightly different path of wanting to learn Spanish and all the things. And I got pretty far on my own, but then I met someone and we ended up dating, and he spoke Spanish. He was from Mexico. He was charming at first, very charming. I never really wanted to be a career woman. I didn't think the ranch was the life for me, and the ranch life to me meant like being able to be home every day, being able to have a family. So this person, of course, very machista mentality, loved that. And I loved that he thought that was cool. And so things began. I became pregnant very quickly, ended up moving back to Mexico with him because he could not stay here any longer.
Okay. And you met in Texas?
I met him in North Carolina.
In North Carolina. Okay, so you were still there.
Yes, I was still there. I was 19 when I was pregnant and decided to move to Mexico. And a lot of the reason, I had been told by a certain family member since I was 12 that you're going to end up pregnant like I did when you're a teen, and I'm going to be the one that you come running to. Oof. And at this point in my life, I had started to recognize that was not healthy. And this rebellion in me was like, that's the last person I'm going to tell that this happened, that she was right,
Sure.
And so I did tell my parents. They were not happy, but my dad tried every way he could to convince me to stay. And just the shame, because I grew up in a very conservative religious family and community. That was it. Like my entire community, this was not accepted. And my grandfather actually told me to get an abortion. And so with all that pressure and then the shame from it, I decided that following this man to Mexico, he had already gone, was my best option. And it was my only chance for adventure and exploration because, now I'm pregnant, about to be a mom. So the only thing left to do is move somewhere else if I ever want to be somewhere else in my life. That was my mentality at the time. So I moved there. I actually had a full-term birth that ended up in a stillborn birth.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. In Mexico, in a crappy, there's a whole story to that, but government-run hospital. And I kind of had this moment where I was like, well, I could go back home, but then there's still the shame, and I didn't want to face everybody that knew me and have to explain the story of what had happened over and over and over again. I was still attached to this man. About the time I had decided to move back home, I ended up pregnant again. And I had immigration paperwork in the works too, so it was like all this work that I'd done to try to get him back here with me was going to be for nothing if I just left. And then I had this other baby, and I thought, well, maybe this really was meant to be, like we were meant to have a family. And so we came back to the United States together, back to North Carolina. The relationship with my parents are amazing human beings. They kind of turned a blind eye to everything that had happened and just accepted us with open arms. They were just glad to have their kid back.
Yeah.
And they were a big part of helping me raise my oldest daughter. So I was still married to this man. About 2 years in, I hear this inner voice. And this whole time, there's been this inner voice that I'm like fighting with in my life. And when I started dating this man, the inner voice was like, this is not right. There's other ways to learn Spanish. This is not where you're supposed to be, what you're meant to do. And I'm like, shut up. I want to date him. He's interested in me. He thinks I'm pretty, whatever. And the inner voice, once again, around the time my oldest daughter was about 2.5, was like, you need to leave. You need to get a divorce. This is not good. I actually have 2 high school girlfriends that sat with me one night and really tried to talk me into leaving because they could see how unhappy I was and just how demanding he was. And I didn't even tell anybody until years later, like all the things that happened behind closed doors.
Right.
Yeah. I know you know. Right. So I make this choice to stay and just try harder. And that's yet another theme in my life. Like just strive harder and it'll get better. And because of the background I was raised in, like divorce wasn't an option. I heard my whole life, just don't even let divorce be an option. So I didn't. I tried harder. Things didn't get much better, but a few years later, they got a little bit better, enough for me to consider having another child. So we had another child and then immediately had another child.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have 3 girls and the last 2 are 14 and a half months apart.
Wow.
Yeah. And the only one of them that was planned was the middle daughter.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So 2 kids in 2 years. When the planned child was born, I had decided to leave my teaching job because it just felt out of alignment. Yeah, public education just felt out of alignment for me. But at the same time, I didn't know what else I could do. I just couldn't even envision. I had gone back to school, gotten my degree, got it in Spanish because that was the easy degree to get as a young mom.
Yeah.
My spouse at that time worked in a restaurant industry, in the service industry, so he was gone. It was like we never saw each other, which is kind of why things were able to go on as long as they were.
Yep.
So I got out of teaching, but couldn't think of anything else to do. I really have always loved advising people, and I have an innate ability to see other people's strengths and connect the dots in their life to show them like what they need to do. So I thought, well, a college counselor, like maybe that's what I should do.
Okay.
So I went back to get my master's in higher education administration. At the same time, I had a newborn baby. And
no big deal.
No big deal. Yeah. So I was going back to school full time, getting my master's, had a newborn baby at home. When she was 6 months old, after I had successfully completed my first semester of my master's, find out that I'm pregnant with another child. No big deal. I'll just, we'll just add another one to the mix.
Why not?
Yeah. And I did get my master's. I finished.
Good for you.
Yeah, I finished that. But it was 2013 13 when I graduated, and the job market was just tanked. There were not many jobs, and most of the jobs in higher education administration, you had to have prior experience, and a lot of them wanted you to have 2 years prior experience. Well, the way most people got that was by having a residency during their master's. And because of my pregnancy, I only got to complete 1 year of my residency. So I didn't have the 2 years of experience. I made it to the final 3 for 3 different positions and was turned down for all 3 of them. And each time it was like, well, we found somebody with more experience. And I'm like, really? Like more experience than finishing this degree and holding down 1 year's worth of a residency and raising 3 kids at the same time?
Right. Like all of the sudden life experience doesn't matter.
Yes.
So frustrating.
Yes. I actually had a man, and it was pretty condescending in the way that he said it. He was like, what makes you think that any of your prior experience, has prepared you for conducting large, like campus-wide events? And I had been a teacher. I had managed classrooms of students, which nobody understands what that's like until you're there. And I just, at that moment, I was like, this isn't for me. This is not right for me. And so I quit looking for jobs in that sector, and I kind of threw my hands up, and I was like, okay, God, I need a job. All these bills are about to be due. The loans I'd taken out so that I could stay home with my kids and go back to school, time was running out on them. And a friend of ours said, hey, you used to teach Spanish. This K-12 charter school is looking for a Spanish teacher, and the girls get to go with you.
Okay.
And so it was a unique opportunity where my kids could come with me to work. And so I took it, even though a part of me was like, oh, I did not want to go back into teaching. But then I loved teaching. And so I held out this hope that this new school would be a different experience. And to some degree it was. It was better than just traditional public ed as far as individualized education programs. But no matter how you slice it, like putting kids in a box, making them sit down, telling them that they can't go to the restroom without permission, like denying them basic human necessities without asking permission, to me just is not okay. I think it feeds into this whole cycle of toxicity that we have in our culture, and it also stagnates the growth of authentic beings, like authentic individuals who are able to understand their unique gifts that they're supposed to bring into this world, because they're told, no, sit down, shut up, do what we tell you to, not what you feel like you need to do, And don't get me wrong, I think there's a place and time for order and structure.
Sure.
But in my opinion, childhood, that should be very limited.
Yeah. Well, it's not one size fits all, but we treat it like it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it. So this kind of catches us up to where my my story I told you about begins.
Okay.
Yeah. I am rushing out the door every day. My ex, meanwhile, is working a job that makes half of what I made as a teacher.
And are you still together at this point?
We're still together at this point. Yes, I stuck it out yet again when I was getting my master's. I felt like I was supposed to leave, but I just had 2 more children with him. And so that did not make sense. There was a fear. There was always this fear that if I got divorced, my kids would have to be alone with him and his family at some point. And I never really sat and thought about that for very long until probably about 2015, 16. That started coming into mind more and more. And then that just reinforced me staying and trying harder. Well, when I started working at the charter school in 2014, I met this wonderful soul who just shines really bright. Her name's Renee, and she encouraged me to be more of my authentic self. I'd say something about like having to make dinner from scratch or something, and her response would be like, girl, we going to McDonald's, or, like whatever. Like, I can't even believe that you do that. And she reminded me constantly that your children are your most important thing, and how much time are you taking away from them by trying to be this perfect wife and work, be the perfect teacher and the perfect wife, and you're wanting to be the perfect parent, but there's nothing left over to do that, and they're the most important. And I knew that too. And so it was this constant cycle of like being mad at myself for saving the last little bits of myself for my kids. And the rage would come out at the end of the night. Like I couldn't control my own emotions. I was not emotionally mature at all. And I was not modeled that very well as a child. And so it was just this cycle that continued and continued. And one morning in 2017, we were rushing out the door, and I am, berating my oldest for once again being the one to make us late. And it's just word vomit coming out of my mouth, things that didn't need to be said. And I'm getting the two younger ones up into the car, and something was said that just fueled the rage, and I slammed my car door. And I had gloves on at the time. My finger, I heard the crunch, and it didn't register what it was. And the glove was stuck in the door, and I just pulled it out. And there was blood dripping from it. And so all this rushing around, it was like this pivotal moment in my life I will never forget, because I was rushing, trying to get to a job that I didn't even want to go to, and mad at myself for, treating my kids like crap, who really were what in my heart, I wanted to be at home with them. I used to love snow days as a teacher because I was like, I get to stay home with my kids.
Yeah.
Like it's an excuse to do nothing and be with them, just be with them. That's all I ever wanted to do, was just be with them. And yet that was not what any of my actions were showing. And in that moment, slammed my door, crushed my finger, ended up not going to work that day. So all this rushing around to get to work on time, I didn't even get to work that day.
Yeah.
Ended up spending 4 hours in the ER with a doctor who had no clue what to do with my finger. Like he just had it sitting in a dish, and he was calling all his other mentor doctors, I guess, trying to figure out what to do.
Oh, gosh.
Until he finally reached an orthopedic hand specialist who told him to wrap it up in a towel and send her to us. So then I spent the next 4 hours of that day with the orthopedic surgeon, who showed me the x-ray of the tip of my finger, which was just like shattered little shards. It looked like white sprinkles at the end of my finger.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So he bandaged me up and then kind of told me how the next 8 weeks of my life were going to look, coming to see him once a week to do finger exercises.
Wow.
And yeah, so this whole day I'm just sitting there thinking something has got to change. Like, I don't know how anything can change. We have a house, like we have a mortgage, there's bills to pay. My husband at this time didn't make enough to pay the bills, so I couldn't just quit my job. And I loved my students, I loved my coworkers, and in all honesty, my coworkers had become my family. They had become my support group. So, like that had become a safety net, a home away from home. At this point, I was spending 12 hours a day at school to make some extra money, and just because it was easier to stay at school than it was to go home.
Yep.
And when we got home, it wasn't very fun. At school, at least, I could hang out with my kids in a fun, loving environment afterwards. And we did, and, they were thriving. I was thriving there at school, and then we'd come home and it'd be this completely different environment. And so the idea of even leaving my coworkers at that point, it's like, I don't know that what am I going to do? So the only thing I could think to do was just, I had to get more peace into my life. And I just made this pact with myself. I'm going to get up 15 minutes earlier every day and spend 10 quiet moments. Like maybe that'll help. I had heard people talk about meditation. I'd also grown up asking questions all my life in church, like, why does scripture say to sit in stillness and listen to God's voice, but everybody always talks when they pray? How do you listen and talk at the same time? And so that kind of became my plan, was I was going to go upstairs in this quiet little space every morning, and for at least 10 minutes, I was going to sit and I was going to listen. Because God, I'd cried out for so long. I was like, I'm going to listen to you and you're going to tell me something, right? Please show me a way out. And so I started that. And then very shortly thereafter, a book by Ann Voskamp that talks about just constant gratitude, like being in a state of gratitude all the time, which halfway through that book I kind of scoffed at because I was like, I want things to get better before I'm thankful for them. But through her book, she convinced me to at least like give it a try. And so I did. The quiet time, the gratitude practice, and things just started to line up. And I had an older mentor in my family that had been pretty instrumental in my young adulthood. He and his wife were in their 70s, and somehow I found out that they had gone on this tour of the national parks out west in these states that I had always dreamed of visiting and had yet to visit. I'd been to Texas, but I had never been to Wyoming or Montana. I'd never really been to what most people consider the West.
Yeah.
And my heart still dreamed of that. Like, actually, with my ex-husband at that time, my husband, we were planning, like, our whole dream was still to own property somewhere out west.
Okay.
But at this point, I had kind of come to the conclusion, like, I didn't trust him to build a house for us out there. I didn't trust him to manage our finances with whatever property we bought if we went and moved somewhere. So I was resistant to it, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I do now that I was resistant to it because I knew it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
So this older couple told me about their trip, and I forget what I said. It was something along the lines of, gosh, I just hope maybe one day I'll get to go to places like that. He got real serious, and he said, if there's any way to make it happen now, do it. Because, his words, not mine, when you're an old fart like me, you can't see half the sights because, you know, my knees and my joints and stuff just wouldn't allow me to hike or go much further beyond the little drive-by sightseeing areas. So that kind of got into my mind. I was like, okay, I always wanted to travel more than just Mexico. I had actually taught a world cultures class. I was really big into the international student community when I was getting my master's and even my bachelor's degree, actually. And had learned a lot from people who came here from other places. And so my world cultures class, I always fought this feeling of being a fraud because I was teaching my kids about these cultures, and I would be very transparent and say, like, I learned all this from people who came from these places. And, you know, half of my students at this pretty elite school had been way more places than I ever had. So I tried to start thinking of ways, like, how could we incorporate more travel into our life? How could we make this happen now? Go to these national parks now with our kids. And budget-wise, I just couldn't wrap my head around how to make it possible, you know. And then one day, my mom was at my house, and I've always looked up through the trees to look at, like, the underside of the branches. Anytime I'm sitting around trees, my head's usually up staring through the branches. My mom looked at me and she was like, why do you do that? And I said, I don't know. It's a different perspective, I guess. I just really like that. And she was like, that's funny. When you were a little girl, you used to climb up trees. And that's exactly what you told me then, too, was I like being up where I can see things from a different perspective. And so that day, that conversation just kept swirling around in my head. And this is like later 2017 at this point. And I was like, I had always talked about anytime I learned about a new culture or anytime I came back from being in Mexico, it was like having new eyes open because it's a whole new perspective. And that clicked, that came to mind. And I was like, oh my gosh, one day I'm going to do something with this. New eyes open, like a new perspective on life, a new way to see the world. And so I put a pin in that and started thinking, okay, Stephanie, if you want to do this travel thing, you want to live a different life, you've tried working on the budget the way you have it now. Let's look at it from a different perspective. Like, how could we make this possible? Well, at the time, the only way it would be possible in my mind was by selling our house and being able to literally, like, sell everything and pick up what little bit we did have and take it with us somewhere. And so I started researching families who were doing that, or researching other people who had done that and were doing that. And I stumbled on this amazing community of full-time family RVers.
Okay, yeah.
And I started watching, there was a handful of families that had YouTube videos or YouTube channels. And so Sundays became like, we would just binge watch these channels. And I eventually talked my ex-husband into this plan. And we did. We sold our home and took the money that we sold it with. And I did some very fancy financing deals and ended up having half the money from our home to live on. And then we took the other half and were able to buy an RV, ride out, and finance a truck to pull it. So It was really a fifth wheel trailer. And our girls were super excited. At this point, my ex had quit his job a year prior without talking to me about it. So we'd been living on just my paycheck for an entire year. So I knew we could do it because this amount I had saved was like my paycheck for the year.
Okay.
And it was really scary because I had no idea what was going to come next after that, or if it was even, I was hoping my calculations were right and it would get us through the entire year.
Sure, yeah.
And as you know, once you start traveling, like expenses start adding up. Yeah. So we made it 4 full months. We traveled full time from July to November in 2019.
And you were just going around?
We were just RVing. Like we went from North Carolina to South Dakota. We ended up staying in South Dakota way longer than I ever thought we would, like 3 weeks, because it's a really cool place. It's a hidden gem.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah.
I haven't been, so.
Yeah, all the places. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yes. We actually, after going to South Dakota, when we went to Yellowstone, my girls were like, this is kind of underwhelming as far as like wild animal sightings go, because at Custer State Park in South Dakota, we had multiple occasions where our whole vehicle was surrounded by a herd of bison. And
wow.
Yeah, lots of wildlife sightings. And then when we went to Yellowstone, it's a much bigger park. And so the vast area, the animals have more area to hide.
Sure.
And I don't blame them.
Yeah, right.
But yeah. So South Dakota, and then we just kind of weaved our way around from South Dakota to Wyoming, Montana, back through another part of Wyoming, Utah. We spent a lot of time in Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, eventually made our way to Texas, where my aunt lives. And she had always been, she was a very free spirit kind of aunt. She had settled here in Texas nearby, and her husband, who passed away pretty quickly after they got married. They had invested in this original Texas honky-tonk bar, restaurant, Pootie's Roadhouse. And it was this really cool place that happened to be kind of the halfway point between North Carolina and my ex's family in Mexico.
Oh.
So when we traveled every Christmas to his family, our stopover point would be my aunt in Texas, because she didn't have family here in Texas with her, although she has built a community that's like family. So we were familiar with the area. We ended up being here for Thanksgiving in Texas and then leaving our RV here and traveling to Mexico to see his family. And at this point, it's like, okay, this is the last straw. And my ex had kind of just spiraled downward this whole trip. We had a few good days with him each week of our trip, but then the other days it would be like, okay, girls, let's get out of the trailer. Dad's going to stay here and rest. We're going to go find something to do. And I thought this was like the last ditch effort to pull him out of whatever he was in. And we ended up staying in Mexico for 3 months, and it just got worse.
Wow.
And worse. And finally I was like, my birthday is the very last day of February, except on leap year. I was like, I want to be back in Texas for my birthday. And there's a George Strait song that's Take Me to Texas.
Okay.
And that song literally was my mantra for like an entire month and a half. Like, just take me to Texas, take me to Texas. I even considered, and one of my oldest daughter suggested, Mom, like, there's the car. We could just take ourselves back to Texas. That's how bad it got.
Was he just refusing to leave?
Yeah.
Okay.
He didn't want to leave. There wasn't anything for us. Originally, the thought was he had a brother that he had worked with on and off before, and he had this idea that he was going to help him open another business. Well, when we got there, his brother had no plans for him to work with him. His brother actually felt so bad he paid for us to go on a vacation while we were in Mexico.
Oh,
he
wow.
felt so bad for me.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to accept it because at this point I kind of knew what was going to happen when we got back to Texas. I just wasn't quite ready to admit it to myself. So we get back to Texas. It's the day before my birthday. On my birthday, I have a great birthday, except for, and part of it was because he only stayed for the very first part. My aunt had this big show. It was a show night at the bar.
Cool.
And she had arranged to take me out to dinner and then see the show afterwards. And one of the musicians is a really cool guy, and it's one of those people in life that you're magnetized towards.
Mm-hmm.
And there was the whole like, that I shouldn't be magnetized toward him because I'm married. And at this point in my life, my ex had been very, very critical and is like, I never wore enough makeup and I never dressed nice enough and I never this, and why don't you color your hair, or why don't you do something with yourself? And I was okay with just being a natural girl, right? Like I took my kids to go hiking all the time. Like that's what I wanted. I wanted to be a rancher. Who cared if I was just a homely looking girl? So that and the music that night stirred something up in me. And I went home and cried like for quite a while. Nobody was awake, or so I thought. My oldest actually got up and came out into the living room area of our camper at that time and saw me crying. And she was like, Mom, and so she sat down and started talking to me, and I kind of confided in her a little bit about the marital issues. But then I was like, no, don't worry. I'll suck it up. I'll deal with it like I always do. Your dad and I will be fine. I never wanted you to be part of a divorced home. And she's just sitting there quietly that whole time. And she looked at me and she said, if you ever did get a divorce, would we ever have to be alone with him? And there was something about the way she said it that set off alarm bells that had already kind of been going off for other reasons. So she talked to me and she confided in me. And then I had a reason to immediately have to make a decision. And it still took me 2 weeks for us to really completely split. But COVID, the shutdown happened.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So that's where we're at now. And there's, everybody's scared that things are really going to be shut down. You're going to be like locked in your homes. And I was in an RV with 3 kids at the time. And my aunt, her fiance, had a ranch here in Texas. And he had invited us to take refuge during the shutdown because he was like, we'll shut the gates to the property, but the girls will still have, 100 acres to roam around on and be free and be in the sunshine, and they'll be healthy. And he had been preparing for this. Like, this man he foresees things. He had been preparing for the lockdown for quite a while. He kind of saw it coming.
Wow.
Yeah. Had stuff, ready to go, and he was ready. Well, I mentioned the idea to my ex, and he was like, no, we're going to stay here. And funny thing was, my aunt's fiance had actually told my aunt, we can put him on a different part of the property. The girls can stay in the ranch house with us, but I don't want him around me. And so when my ex said no, he didn't want to go, and just how illogical that was, plus everything else I had learned, and I was trying to make this quick break anyways, I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is the break. And so I did. I packed as much as I could. He was sitting there on the couch watching TV. And I was packing things up, and I had the truck packed up. And as I had the girls get in the truck before he even looked up to ask where we thought we were going. And I basically told him, I was like, we're going away and you can lock down here. And this is the first day of our separation, and I'm gone. And I walked out the door, slammed the door and took off. Because I was so scared of not getting out, of not, being able to make that quick break. I was scared I would go back on my own decision. And so, we then spent this time that was so surreal because it was blissful and tragic at the same time. And this beautiful property that was created as a resort. It was a luxury treehouse resort. So we made this break, broke my finger, and it literally led 2 years later or 3 years later to this final break up of a relationship that had really been dragging me down. Mm-hmm. And the transformation that happened during, I think it was about 40 days, which when I look back on that, I'm like, that's so weird that was the timeline. It was 40 days,
Very biblical.
Yes, that's exactly, yes. Well, very biblical, except for at the time, I was doing all the exploration. Both my aunt and her fiance, they're just very much, there is a Christ and there is love and universal love, and that is Christ is what we are all supposed to be striving toward. But the striving is not what human striving looks like. Striving is really meant to be relaxing into who you already are. So that is the kind of loving presence that was caring for my children at this time. Like,
amazing.
We lived in this ranch house together, made meals together. Nobody had to work. It was blissful. And then, my bank account was eventually going to run out of money. I needed to find a job. And I kind of stumbled serendipitously into a job with a big-time entrepreneur coach. And I ended up as one of the final candidates for a coaching position within his company. And I didn't get the job. But I was called the next day and asked if I would consider another job with them because they just really, really wanted to work with me. And the only other position at the time that they had was being the executive assistant of his wife and also their house manager, which at that time I was like, I don't even know what that means. And I have this rebellious nature in me that I didn't know that I could ever be somebody's personal assistant or executive assistant. Mm-hmm. But I was like, okay, I don't really have any options here and money's about to run out. So yeah. And so I still felt like this was the right next step to take, even though I knew from the get-go it was going to be a struggle, just given who I was, the amount of education, which, great people. And I was given lots of opportunity for healing. They introduced me to EMDR therapy. They introduced me to breath work. They introduced me to even more ways of believing and being and just seeing things and just how to create an environment that was conducive to peace and harmony versus chaos.
Yeah.
And so I was introduced to a lot of these modalities, yet at the same time, my position within the company kind of evolved quite a bit, and my title evolved eventually into social media manager. I was already managing Pootie's, the bar's social media. And so it was natural to pick this up, but it was never, I was, especially at the time, kind of anti-social media. So eventually the whole misalignment thing came up again, and I just didn't feel like it was the right place to be. Well, about this time, I was given an opportunity by my aunt's fiance, the same one that had, just kind of our white knight rescuer. He was at a point in his life where he was ready to start a passion project, and he needed somebody to help do the admin part of starting it. And so I accepted to start this with him. I had read his book, and really, it was a book that was so far over my head. I literally had to read it 4 times before I understood the words. But the first time I read it, my soul understood it. Like I resonated with what the meaning was. And
what is this book?
The book is called The New Code.
Okay.
Yeah. And
I will need to read this book.
Yes. It's, well, you actually, I would point you to the nonprofit that we started was BCC Institute. And so BCC stands for Bioadministration, Citadelization, and Cosmonomics, which are 3 new branches of science. But it's a way of relating to the world based on what he says is like the most perfect blueprint that's ever been created, which is the human body. And so the whole basis is that human organizations should be based upon the blueprint of the human body because it's functioning and it functions well. And when you treat it the right way and you give it the right fuel, it can go on, for quite a while, and it can produce more life. So it's a life-giving system versus the kind of systems we have now, like public education, that take life away, that restrict life or constrict it.
Yeah.
And so I started working with him, and, it's still this passion project in the very beginning stages. And so really took a lot of twists and turns. And then he had an incident happen in his life where he had a lot of grief around it, and things just paused. And I felt bad. I felt out of integrity for accepting a salary when there wasn't really much work coming in. I wasn't doing enough for my salary, which I look back now and I'm like, oh my gosh, I continue to feel like I have to strive in order to earn money, right? Mm-hmm. And I'd always, when I left teaching and we started traveling, I had this desire to coach others. I still had this desire. And so I had started neweyesopen.com with the intention of it becoming a coaching business. But I thought, I had to earn money from it first, and I couldn't earn money if it wasn't a store or a shop of some kind. So I basically spent all my time setting up the website and the Shopify shop, and not any time talking about, I want to coach people. Hey, I'll take coaching clients.
Yeah.
So, it never got off the ground. So I circled back to that and started looking into, okay, what would my next steps be? Like, I still want to work with a nonprofit, but as a true nonprofit volunteer, So if I'm going to do that, I need a source of income. So I need to go figure out what I'm going to do and what I'm going to do for myself. And so I had these ideas of, okay, well, in business, like, these are some things that I could maybe offer. And I stumbled upon another mentor who certified directors of operations. And she and I met, and she kind of filled in a lot of the gaps. And we were very aligned on our view of operators. And the best way that I can explain it is she's a natural business operator mindset type of person. Mm-hmm. And so you've got a visionary entrepreneur coaching people on operations versus an operator.
Right.
Coaching people on operations.
Yeah.
And so I aligned with her very much. I definitely have a lot of operation skill sets, and that just come natural. It's a lot of the strategy and organization aspects of it. But I'm pretty equal on my operator and visionary, like any of the tests I take. I have a lot of both. Mm-hmm. So long story short, I took her certification course, thought this is my thing, because I still didn't believe enough in coaching people or my ability to coach people. Like, I had to have another credential behind my name to be valid in doing any of this. So I got the certification, started my business, New Eyes Open Strategic, Neo Strategic. And about halfway through the certification course, which this has happened with every degree I have ever pursued in my life, I'm like, I don't know that this is the right thing for me. But I finished it out because I finish things that I start. And then I spent quite a while struggling with my messaging. I was and still am advertising myself as a director of operations because I've done it. Mm-hmm. I was pretty much did that for Pooties, the bar, for a while. That's what I did to set up the nonprofit. Mm-hmm. I feel comfortable doing it, but there's still this idea that that's not quite it, Stephanie, like, you're still hiding. And so more recently, I've been doing a lot of soul searching and kind of developed it into, okay, I'm not just a business strategist, I'm a life strategist, because every speaking opportunity I get is about this, my life, and how it's changed and the trajectory it's taken and what the strategies were that I used to make the drastic changes I did, which at the time I'm like, I took the next wrong step, or I took the next right step,
Yep.
And so that is now pretty much what I do. I coach people on taking the next right step for them based on strategy. And by strategy, it means having somebody listen to you and kind of connect your dots for you in a way that you can't see yourself. And I can now look back and see all my steps were right for, one reason or another. They eventually led me to where I am, which, as we mentioned earlier, I am living in Texas. Mm-hmm. I do not have a family in the traditional sense of family, but I have my girls, and we have a community that feels as close or even closer than some of my family, my true blood family members feel. And I am dating somebody. He was one of the first friends I made here. And then we both kind of did our separate things for about 8 months. And one night, it just so happened he literally swept me off my feet. And I still at that point was a bit clueless to the fact that he was into me.
Listen, after you've been through what you've been through with your ex, it's hard to recognize it like genuine, authentic interest.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I had a whole month leading up to that of clues that now, and he's even said, like, I mean,
I could not have been more obvious.
Yes. Yes. And so we've been together for a while now. November will be 3 years. And
Awesome.
It's been amazing. I get told how beautiful I am, like, on the constant. And it still is a little difficult. And the first year of our relationship, it was so peaceful that I tried to talk myself out of it because I was so used to the push-pull, the toxicity, and there's absolutely none of that. We are really good friends. I would try to convince myself that it was boring and then realize, like, wait a minute, we have so much fun together. It's not boring. Like, our life is not boring at all. And yeah, it's always been wonderful when you're conditioned to the toxic dynamic of relationships and to somebody constantly, controlling your thoughts and actions. That freedom and even the encouragement to be your own person sometimes feels like that person's pushing you away.
Yeah.
It's helped a whole lot with creating boundaries and learning what I had no boundaries for a long time.
Right.
Oh my gosh. That's been, a big part of this. And he's been very instrumental in being a sounding board with that. I'll feel big feelings and he can articulate. I'm like, I don't know why I feel like this. And he's like, I can. It's because
That's
this,
amazing.
this, and this. And I'm like, oh yeah. Yes, it is. Thanks.
I am so glad you found that. That's
too.
amazing.
Me too.
Truly.
Not just for me, but also, he never wanted to have kids or thought he would have kids, and he doesn't yet, but you wouldn't know that. Sitting at the dinner table with my 2 children, my youngest 2, they literally save all their questions for the nights that he comes over to eat dinner. And this is another thing about my ex. In my family growing up, the dinner table was a beautiful place of connection. It was one of the times where, like, everybody kind of put all their other stuff aside and we sat together and we talked. And I'm such a slow eater. I'm like the slowest eater ever. And either my dad or my mom would always stay there and sit with me the entire time I was finishing my food. And so that I never realized until I got older really meant something to me. And my ex was very much no, we come to the table to eat and then you go about doing your own business. And for the person who had been told, like, these scratch-made meals were expected every night, even after working for 10 hours a day, you make that meal and then somebody sits down and immediately gets up. And when they sit down, if the kids try to talk about their day, they're told to shut up. That broke my heart over and over again. So many nights at the dinner table with tears in my eyes. And now I'm at the dinner table with tears in my eyes, but there are these tears of joy because I'm like, his food's getting cold because he's answering their questions. Like, how beautiful is that?
I love that.
Yeah.
Did your ex put up a fight?
He did not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
He knew better.
Good. I mean, at least one good thing came out of that, right?
Yes.
Like, thank God.
Yeah. And it took a little while, but eventually we had to be pretty honest with my youngest 2 about why everything happened, for their own safety and self-awareness, just for other adults in their life. Yeah. Been a big advocate for talking to your kids about safe touch and healthy relationships with adults and things that are okay for adults to talk to kids about or talk about around kids, and when to excuse themselves from the area if things are being talked about that they shouldn't be around. And so in that aspect, it kind of breaks my heart that you have to break their innocence a little bit to educate them of what is safe and okay. But that is to keep them safe and okay and protect their overall innocence for as long as possible.
Yeah.
And so we've done a lot of that. And it's sad in a way that they have absolutely no connection with their father, but it's also the healthiest thing moving forward.
Yeah. And your oldest is 12?
No, my oldest is 19 and a half.
Oh,
My
okay.
middle child
Your middle is 12.
Is 12.
I was like, you have a 12-year-old.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I do. Well, she'll be 12 in 2 weeks.
Okay.
But
Okay.
Yes, the 12-year-old and then 10 and a half.
Okay. And how's your oldest doing?
She is on her own, pursuing her independence right now. She's doing well,
Good.
I think.
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah. As well as 19-year-olds,
And there it is, right? Like,
Yes.
it's a hard age.
Yes.
Yeah.
It can be.
Yeah. I love your story. We were talking before we actually started recording, and we have a lot of similarities in certain ways, but I really appreciate your ability to pivot and your willingness to pivot. And this, I think, calls back to your whole journey and what you've learned, right?
Yes.
But just the idea that if you don't stay moving forward, you're failing or you're not doing the right thing. And I was actually just talking about this with somebody else, how like we attach morality to moving forward.
Yes.
When, there's so many paths. It's not just a forward moving path that you have to be on. So I really appreciate your dedication to that. And I also appreciate your insistence on the fact that your value is not centered in your productivity.
Yeah.
I think that is a very culturally detrimental practice that we have, especially in the West, specifically in America, that your value, your identity is wrapped up in what you can do. And that's a really hard thing to move out of. And I think it's like not something you ever completely let go of because it's so easy to get right back into that.
It really is, because groceries cost money, right?
Yeah. Hey.
And I am so blessed, and it's not lost on me. And I'm very grateful that I've been given a space where I can pause and be still, and my needs have been taken care of. And I'm also very aware that that is not a luxury that a lot of people get. And it's this pause and this stillness where that next path really that you're aligned with illuminates. And I'm actually in that right now where I'm like, okay, just pause. My messaging for my business is not flowing like I wanted it to. And I've learned now, like, okay, if I'm feeling frustration and things aren't flowing through, then something's off.
Yeah.
And we need to just stop and pause. And that's a really scary place to be.
Sure.
Because like I said, groceries cost money. So do shoes. And, especially when you have kids, like.
Yeah. It's a whole other layer to that conversation. Absolutely.
Yes. So I by no means want anybody to feel like they are less than if they're just moving on to the next opportunity because they need grocery money.
Absolutely.
But there is something to be said with when you move on to another opportunity, you don't necessarily have to attach your identity to it. And so you can get the job at wherever you need to get it, McDonald's, whatever. I don't know why I keep coming back to McDonald's on this. But you can get the job wherever to make the money that you need for the time being and not attach your whole identity to that.
Yeah.
And still be searching, still keep your eyes open for that next possibility, that next opportunity that really is aligned with where you're supposed to be going in this world.
Absolutely. And I really do appreciate the acknowledgement of the privilege it is to be able to take a step back. But yeah, I appreciate that what you're saying is you don't have to be in a state of complete rest. Like you can still be in a state of movement and be thinking about the bigger picture or being a visionary or dreaming. I mean, let's really call it what it is, right? It's dreaming.
Yes, please don't quit dreaming. I actually yesterday sent just intro letters or emails out to every single horseback riding facility and ranch that I could find the contact information on in and around this area, because it occurred to me, I was like, well, that's what I always wanted to do. And I have yet to look in that direction for an opportunity. So maybe that's what I should be doing. Yeah. And I just kind of got quiet yesterday, and I heard this or had this idea about 2 weeks ago that I needed to reach out to these local ranches. And I reached out to one, and that was it. Never heard back from them. And I didn't pursue it any further. And this is how it's kind of happened for me too in my life. It becomes this idea that you can't ignore. So if you keep having something that reoccurs and keeps coming back up and coming back up, it's worth exploring. Like, do yourself a favor. What do you have to lose? I had a friend tell me one time, like, you send the email, what's the worst that's going to happen? You really think somebody who doesn't have time for it is even going to read it? Like, you're not offending them by sending the email. And then on the flip side, what is the best possible scenario that could come from that? And let it play out in both directions and see how you feel about the positive direction. And if the positive direction lights you up, then go for it. Like, what do you have to lose?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think there's power in, speaking positivity and speaking life into things.
Oh, yes.
And even to mention like how such detrimental things were spoken over you as a child, and it really affected how you saw yourself and what you accepted into your life as a teenager. Yep. And, that's not to say that was that person's fault implicitly or anything, but it does show the power that, words have over people, the power that mindset has over people, and that it's not a little thing to think positively or think openly. Yeah. Right?
I love that you're doing these stories because, like you said when we were talking earlier, speaking it out loud, the power of the spoken word is something that I took for granted for a long time. I used to, it's funny, you said you thought about writing these stories, and I used to think I wanted to be a writer, and every time I would sit down to try to write my story out, it just wouldn't come. And then the first time, which oddly enough, I taught Spanish in an improv storytelling style. So why did I not think that my voice was the way to tell my story, Well, I'm coming to realize it is. And every time it's so easy to speak out your truth. And so what do you want your truth to be? Speak that out. Even if that doesn't reflect your current reality, speak it out so that it can reflect your reality years from now.
Absolutely.
Or who knows? Months.
Yeah. Hey, you never know, right?
Yeah.
And I love what you're doing too. And I really appreciate that you mentioned how you were struggling with the validity of what you wanted to do.
Yes.
Right? Like, why would anybody want me to do this? Why would anybody pay me to do this?
Yes.
And just personally, that's something I struggle with all of the time. I'm like, I'm doing this. I'm not getting paid to do this. Yeah. But like, I would love to get paid to do this, So it's that kind of thing of, why do we think that this isn't valuable?
Right.
And, I've been exploring this recently too, of the idea that art and culture and story is the mark of like a very high functioning society. So like, again, it's a luxury, right? Yes. Being able to invest in that kind of thing is a luxury, and not everybody has access to that, but it should be what we're striving towards, right? If people have room in their lives and their minds to be accessing and seeking out culture and art and story, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, then, travel experiences, all the things.
Right, right. So that is a measure of success. And so why would we think that we can't be doing that we can't be working towards that? Yeah. So, but I'm still struggling with it. I'm still at the back of my mind, like, but seriously, like.
So there's a women's network here. It's the Women of Austin. And the founder, Mindy, the other day, I did not know this. I just kind of assumed she has a podcast and we have this networking group. And I assumed the money came from the networking group for her to do the podcast. I mean, her podcasts, they're beautiful spaces, and she like has a new outfit. They're filmed and they're pretty glamorous is how I'll put that. And then it came out the other day in one of our mastermind meetings that, no, I don't. Somebody else pays for all of that. And I messaged her. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to learn more about this. Like, how? And she just messaged me back and she said, we can talk about it sometimes, but honestly, I just started asking. And that was a real moment for me. I was like, oh my gosh, the help is out there. The sponsorship is out there. The money's out there. There are people that need write-offs and need a place to funnel their cash into out there. If we just ask, like, And once again, that comes back to the power of our voice. We have to use our voice to ask for what we want, ask for the help we need, ask for the mentorship we need. And that's how we get to the next place we're meant to go.
Yeah. That's amazing. I feel like now I need to go ask for some stuff.
Yes. I think this podcast is very worthy of sponsorship.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. It's the kind of thing where I've had people be a little bit skeptical of it when I first introduce it, because it's like your elevator pitch, or you have 30 seconds to talk about something, and they're like, okay, yeah, life stories, sure. And then I've sat down with people and actually interviewed them, and afterwards it is like all of the sudden they're an ambassador for the podcast. They're like, it's really cool. This is what she does. And I'm like, yes. 2 days ago, you were like questioning me about the value and how I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And not in any malicious way, just general curiosity, but not from a place of necessarily openness or acceptance. And then after you experience it yourself, you're like, oh, wait, okay.
Yeah. I know. I told somebody a little while back that I would like to start a podcast at one day, but I just, had no idea how you would even go about it, because, New Eyes Open, the way I came to that was by asking people from other cultures about their culture and how they literally saw things differently than me.
Yeah.
And so eventually one day, especially now that I see how you just busted this out in a public space for us, this is really cool. It doesn't have to be some, high-tech setup.
No, gosh. And that's the thing too. It's like you can talk all day about quality and whatever. And look, I'm not recording this on my iPhone. Like, I did invest in some equipment because I do want a certain amount of professionalism involved, but I tell people I need a relatively quiet space.
Yes.
So if there's a background noise, I don't care.
Yeah, who cares?
Truly. And I tell this particular story all the time, where I was in Kenya last year doing some interviews. Nice. And I'm sitting in rural Western Kenya in a schoolhouse interviewing a program director for an NGO. And she's talking about her previous experience working in refugee camps.
Oh, wow.
And there's a rooster in the background.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, I can hear the rooster. I don't want to stop her right now because I don't want to jar her out of her stream of consciousness. So I'm internally warring with, does the rooster matter? And I come to the conclusion that it doesn't.
Yeah. That's so funny. And when you say you're interviewing someone in the Kenya setting and the rooster's crowing, like that to me just adds to the podcast experience.
I agree. Yeah.
But part of the reason I didn't invite you to my property is because we would have had a rooster crowing in the background. And he sounds like somebody's trying to strangle him every time. He's like a wimpy rooster with a strangled crow. It's pretty annoying.
No, all good. There's things that matter and there's things that don't. That's and I try to, walk a middle line of balance, because there's a lot of podcasts out there. And if you sound like you're recording in a wind tunnel, people aren't going to want to listen to it. That's annoying. Yeah. But it's walking the line and kind of prioritizing what's important in the process.
Yes. Which is all that matters.
Yeah, truly. And that's going to look different for different people too. So
very true.
Did you want to talk more about your business at all? I just want to make sure that we cover everything.
I think we covered most of it. Because I've pivoted again in business, I do still offer business operations consulting. So if anybody needs help with the back end of their business, my main thing is I provide annual strategic plans that are mostly done for you. So you get a project management board preloaded with your entire year's worth of a business plan.
Nice.
Hand it over to you. I hand over the keys with a little tutorial video on how to use it, how to make it work for you and your team. And then there's other layers, like I can do quarterly plans. We can get as detailed as you want me to get in your business without me actually being a W-2 employee in your business. I maintain that. But I am pivoting more towards helping people with a life strategy. So anybody who's out there that really resonated with my story, if you need somebody to talk to for a different perspective. Just, I think on my website, I recently changed it to say, like, I am your freedom to explore new possibilities, like new paths. If you feel like there's no way out and you need somebody to talk to, like, please reach out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do, because I believe so much that we all need to move forward in this. My first call is free. 30 minutes. Like, if you can't afford it, don't not call because you know you can't afford it. My first call really is a strategy session. And then I believe in everybody being a sovereign individual. So if you think you need more help after that, we'll pursue that. And if not, it's great meeting you. And I will be your cheerleader forever because once you meet me, you don't get rid of me.
That's awesome. I'm personally glad to hear that.
Yes. And it is very true. That is honestly the biggest reason why I've pursued the things I've pursued in life is because I just naturally love encouraging others and being their cheerleader. And so that's why I do what I do, and I'll keep on doing it, and I'll keep advocating for kids to not be in public institutions. Although full transparency, during my whole transition 2021, 2022, and even possibly my youngest child is really begging to stay in school for another year. I took everyone out of school when we went on the RV journey and was unschooling them. So just deconditioning us from public education and the structure. But I got my high schooler out, kept her out. She never went back to school. My two youngest, for my own sanity, and because at the time I had a job I had to leave the house for, they ended up going back to school. And I literally cried as I dropped them off that first day because I just knew in my heart that's not what I wanted for them. But God bless Texas. Texas public education, at least where we live, is a lot better than what I had experienced in other places.
Okay.
So I'm happy with them having been where they are for now. But this year I'm bringing my middle daughter home, and next year the other one's coming back home. Okay. So that we can continue our homeschool, unschool journey.
Yeah. I like the phrase unschool.
Oh my gosh. It calls to me so much just because homeschooling for me, it didn't work. And I was a teacher. Anytime I tried to structure the learning, it just didn't happen. But when I let them go off and be free, they would naturally dive into things. Like my middle daughter was trying to put back together the circuit board of I don't even remember what it was. It was some electric tool that my ex had. And she was watching him work on it and drawing diagrams of the circuit board as she watched him. Wow. Not even looking at the paper. So kids are natural learners.
Yeah.
They have a natural love of learning if you just let them.
Yeah. I would argue humans are natural learners,
exactly.
Right? If we allow the space for different types of learning.
Yes.
And if we don't measure intelligence just by degrees that you hold or your work experience in that specific field.
Yes.
I understand that there are certain things that need a specific. I want my doctor to have gone through the process, but there are so many things in life that just.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and even doctors, you can be unschooled up until college.
Sure.
And then get your degree as a doctor.
Yeah. So I do have one question that I ask everybody at the end of each episode, which is a lot of this podcast started out of an exercise in compassion, realizing how much my perspective had shifted and how differently I viewed other people based on what I had personally lived through. So through the lens of your experience, how do you view compassion? What does that mean to you?
Oh, man. I have been a big advocate for this my entire life. This is an easy answer for me. My view of compassion is just always leading with your heart and giving other people the benefit of the doubt. I have always said, everybody has a story and you don't know hardly any of it, even if you think you do. Even if you think you do. So compassion is, first off, it starts in yourself. You can't be compassionate towards others if you're not compassionate towards yourself. And that took me a long time to learn. It's funny. I used to think that I was a very compassionate person, but I denied myself that self-love and self-compassion. And so it starts with yourself. Like, just be kind to yourself, speak kind words to yourself, and then let that overflow into the rest of your life as you interact with other people.
Yeah. It's important.
It's so important.
Yeah. And it has been such a cool thing to see how different people answer that question and where they highlight like what's important when interacting with other people. There's a lot of, similar themes to everybody's answer.
Yeah.
Because the word does have a definition, but how that gets lived out is so interesting, how we all receive things differently.
Very true.
And I think it's such an important part of this exercise because you realize there are certain things that you relate to in other people's stories. And so through that, you can understand where they're coming from, but nobody has lived your exact sequence of events.
Yeah.
And so the perspective that you get from your very unique formula is something that nobody else will ultimately have.
That's right.
So,
yeah. Along the lines of compassion, my boyfriend likes to tell the girls and I, you don't have to be nice to anyone, but you always have to be kind to everyone. And the first time he said that, it took me a little while and I was like, what? But that goes back to that self-compassion, right? Like, you don't have to be nice if they're infringing on your boundaries or, it's something you're not aligned with, but you still have to be kind.
Yeah.
And there is a difference between the two, and nice is a social condition.
I do love that distinction. It's an important one, especially for women.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Be polite all the time.
No. Kind, yes, but sometimes kind does not look very nice.
Yes. That's a tagline right there. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was such a pleasure talking to you. I'm so glad to have met you and to have learned some of your story. No, you can only cover so much in an hour and a half.
I know, right? we still went quite a while. Yeah, I know. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really enjoyed it, and I love what you're doing with the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to The Human Experience. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, share it with others, and leave a rating and review on your favorite platform. Everyone has a story, and I'd love to hear yours, so be sure to check out the show notes for more information about how to stay in touch. Do good and take care.